Hello and welcome to the podcast You're Better Than That, hosted by me, Hannah Miller, and joined by my friend Zoe. Good afternoon, Zoe.
Hello.
Hi, we are doing something a bit different.
Yes,
this is
we
a
are.
bit of a takeover episode.
Yeah.
We're going to get straight into it, but simply we thought we'd have a go with a new format. Lots of great podcasts to use a Q&A session where listeners, blog subscribers message in with questions. And so we asked people to send in their questions to Zoe. They use the email podcast@hellosidekick.co, which means that Zoe has been filtering through those questions, which I have not seen, in order to compile a list for this episode. You did tell me that you had a lot.
There was a lot that came through. So we're going to try our best to get through most of them.
Yeah, we'll do what we can.
There is some crossover. There's some light questions.
Yeah.
There's some deep questions.
I'm excited.
Just going to go for it.
And also people sent a few on Instagram for you as well. So we've got all of those, and thank you everyone. We'll do this again. So just to say, if this works and people like it, we will go again. But I am like excited / apprehensive.
Yeah.
Do you want to get going?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, I'm going to keep these anonymous just in case.
Sure.
But this lovely person said, "Hi Hannah, you're a superhero for me. So my question is, what's your superhero power? And would you be a cape or no cape superhero?"
Oh, okay. So cape or no cape? I love the idea of one, but I'm the kind of person who can't really even navigate a revolving door. So if I had a cape, I would find myself in the right mess of a situation. So I love the idea of a cape, but I also realise that like coordination is not high on my skill set.
Yeah.
So probably no cape. What is my superpower? I think my superpower is being able to figure people out and to spot what's going on for them and to use my intuition to kind of bring growth in people's lives. I think that's my superpower.
I love that. Next question. So you have 3 boys, but this person is asking, if you had 3 girls, what would their names be?
Okay, so my life would look very different. That isn't the path that I was given, but we did have some girls' names. Noah, my eldest, would have been called Jemima.
Yeah.
Jemima with an H on the end. And then by the time we were having Jude would have been called Evangeline.
Oh.
And by the time we were coming back around to Levi, he was going to be Jemima.
Jemima.
We were recycling it. Funnily, we have a friend whose daughter is called Jemima, who's a couple of years older than Noah. And she would have been, I didn't know this at the time because I didn't know them then, but she was going to be Noah if she'd have been a boy.
Aww.
So we had like, that
circle.
Jemima was there. The Noah Jemima happened anyway.
Oh. Okay. Favourite sweet treat?
Oh, gosh. Okay, I love Ritter Sport chocolate and marzipan, which you can't get from that many places. I love a good jelly sweet. I know they're bad for me, strawberry laces, so I limit those, but I do love them. And I just love Cadbury Dairy Milk as well, chocolate, but Cadbury's buttons, all of that. Laura loves the twisted buttons, doesn't she?
She does.
The ones that are white and milk chocolate together, so she's introduced us to those. I'm a chocolate girl and a naughty sweets kind of girl.
Okay.
I'm easily pleased, actually, to be quite honest. I'll do anything I'm given. Mars bars I love too.
This person is asking, how have you found the transition from parenting children to young adults? What tips would you give other parents?
That's a great question, isn't it? I think the challenges with the transition include less control. You have less agency over their decisions. They are more and more their own people. So that's a big transition. So you can't use what you used to use because it's not appropriate. I also think for many people, another transition can be loneliness in it because you have to be more protective of what's going on for your teenager and your young adult. It's okay to say 7-year-olds being an irritant or that they're having paddy, moaning or whatever. It's not so appropriate to say about an older child, and so it can feel a little bit more lonely because you've got to protect them. And it's more complex, I think. Things are not straightforward in terms of nothing straightforward, but I think it gets more and more complex. I think was the second part of that, how have I navigated it?
Tips. Tips
So
for other parents.
Some tips are choose your tribe carefully in terms of the people who you are going to have in your life. I've got some amazing supportive friends, and we get it and we understand each other, and we're not in competition with each other. I'm so grateful for that. So find people you can be safe with. I think be on the same page as your partner. If you have a partner, I think it's really important. Be a team, be united, even if you need to off grid have conversations where you're not so united. I think that's important. I need to cough. And I think being careful about, I will sometimes say to the boys, I do remember what it feels like to be this age, in a non kind of, I know everything you feel kind of way. But I'm also mindful that I have never been their age. As in, I have never been what they're experiencing at this time in this generation with the needs of this generation. I don't know what it feels like to be 18 in 2024. I have no idea. I don't understand everything that's going on for them. And I think another thing I'm trying hard to do, not so well, but I am trying, like when something's going on for them, is before I start moving into solution mode, is to say, I can hear that this is really difficult for you.
Yeah.
Because although I'm by nature I've got a lot of empathy, like I feel, I can be quick to want to solve.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my husband said I did it to him the other day. I just was like, he says, you're just trying to solve it. I just wanted to tell you. And, you know, it's easy for us to see that is the other way around in a relationship, but it was me doing it. So listening, not trying to solve everything, and recognise not all roads lead back to me. And I am not fully responsible for everything they choose to do. But I would say it's really hard, and it needs constant reassessment as to where your child's at, and letting goes, holding on.
That's good.
Great question.
Yeah. This question, how can you influence the change you want to see in workplace culture rather than leave in pursuit of greener pastures?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's a great question. So there's times to leave for greener pastures. Sometimes it's like it is the end of the road. It's time to go. I've been in that position. But whilst you're there, as cheesy as it sounds, is we've got to think about being the change we want to see. I think Barack Obama might have said that, or somebody else. But I think I say this a lot in my workshops. If you work somewhere where nobody gives praise and recognition, start doing it.
Yeah.
You can be the lowest rung of the, like, you know, the workplace hierarchy. Who's to say you can't give praise to a colleague or your boss? Do it anyway. When I would maybe say, if you want to be the change, pick a couple of things at a time that you tangibly can do, and do them every day.
Yeah.
Pick some things that are countercultural and just do the thing. We were in a really negative place in my old workplace at one point, and me and a colleague called Amy, she might be listening to this, she's much younger than me, we had a discussion about how negative everything had become, and we decided we were going to do something about it. So we decided for a week we were going to put on all kinds of different positivity initiatives. We left chocolates in everyone's pigeonholes as just a little gift. We did Post-it notes another day. We did a thing on the board in the staff room. And we just thought we blew up some, we just did silly things. But we were like, we're just going to shift the needle a little bit. And we can fall into the trap of thinking none of this matters because it's not big enough, or this is going to solve everything. And neither of those things are going to be true. But you can shift a direction. And we definitely made people feel better because of what we were trying to do. Yeah. So I think don't try and do everything. Pick one or two things, do it consistently, and look for allies of people who can join your little merry band.
Nice.
We could do a whole episode on that, actually.
Yeah.
Come back to that point, note to self.
What strengths would you bring to the zombie apocalypse, and what role would you play?
Oh my goodness me. I often think about if we had a plane crash and I came out of it, we were landed on a desert island, what would I be doing?
Yeah.
So I'd probably do a couple of things. I would try and befriend who I could to get help.
Yeah.
I'd try and win the zombie over. That would probably be part of what I did.
Just watching
the dog.
Yeah.
The tea? Yeah. There's not much in there. I would try and befriend the zombie.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I'd do. And I also think I would be trying to gather round everyone and help communicate the plan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I might have some ideas, but I wouldn't necessarily be the person who's like, this is definitely what we need to do, but I could get people to come with us.
Yeah.
That would be my gift to
Love
the zombie
that.
apocalypse. I'd also probably have a good little cry and hug with people too, and laugh and joke. Bit of dark humour always helps difficult days.
Yeah. What is your most profound leadership lesson?
Whether it's the most profound, I don't know, because I'm saying this without having thought about all the profound leadership lessons. Leaders are human beings, and my own leadership learning has been that not everybody is going to like you, and not everybody's going to agree with what you do. Not everybody is going to be for you. Take good counsel and then do it anyway. I think that's probably what I've learnt. And I've also learnt that I think going with others as much as possible, rather than just going hard after something in a ruthless way, in the long run, pays dividends. That's a great question.
Yeah. These are really good questions.
Really good.
Next question. When you enter a different season, like moving jobs, house, getting married, how do you manage expectations for what you can achieve whilst also giving yourself time to adjust to new circumstances?
I saw something the other day where it said, if all you've got to give today is 40%, you've given 100% if you give that 40%. And on a similar vein, life moments and transitions, we have to think about what capacity do I have right now? And I've talked about this before, this idea of strategic underperformance. If you're about to do something new or you're navigating a change, you've got to kind of assess the things you've got going on and decide which ones are going to get the lion's share of who you are. If you've got a little one starting school, for example, you are going to have to think for that term, I'm going to have to be a bit more present. They're going to come home and fall asleep in their dinner every night. I've got to be ready for that. I'm going to be a little bit emotional about how they're going to be. What have I got to underperform in? That doesn't mean you don't turn up for that term or for a few weeks. And then it might be then that in the January you start a new job and you think, right, I'm starting a new job. So we're going to have TV dinners a bit, or we're going to have, not necessarily TV dinners, but we're going to probably cut back on, we're going to have a bit more ready-made stuff, or we won't be doing quite as many things in an evening because I've got to give a bit more time to my work. And I think we have to look at it as like a series of dials that we move up and down. The problem is for so many of us, super women or super people, is we want every dial to be at max all the time. So we've got to kind of think that one's going to shift down if that one's going up. If I am going to rewrite the purpose pursuit, which we are, that's going to take some time and mental space and probably some time that I've got to give to it, which means there is a couple of other things I'm going to have to say no to. And it's simply a case of going in prepared and weighing that stuff up. I think we are so much better at coping with our expectations of ourselves if we've done that from the get-go.
That's a really good answer. Next question. Hi, Hannah. If you could live anywhere in the world doing something completely different, what would that be?
Oh, gosh. Well, I've said before, I've always thought Barcelona would be an amazing place to live. I've said that before. I'm not, wildly well-travelled. Like I haven't ever been to South America, for example, so I can't really comment, although I really want to go to South America. Barcelona, I kind of think, has everything. It's sunny, it has the sea, it has the city, it has heritage, it has great food, it has football for those that like that, it has community. I mean, literally music. I think it's a win-win city. So I would quite like to live there, maybe. I can't speak Spanish, that would be a problem.
Big problem.
What would I want to do? I really love what I do. So I feel like I'd want to be doing something that involved communicating in some way, shape or form. One thing I'd love to do is have my own, what's it called when you have guests on?
When you have guests on?
Like a guest on the show, like an Oprah type thing.
Like a talk
What's
show.
it called? Talk show.
Yeah.
I'd love a talk show.
That I can
But
see
I'd
that.
struggle to do that in Barcelona because I can't speak Spanish.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So that would be a problem. I'm definitely a sunny climes kind of person. So I would be choosing a sunny place.
Yeah, good answer. What would be your one practical tip for someone who is contemplating a career change?
Okay, one practical tip, very simply, is know your strengths, or come and do my course. No, know what your strengths are and really get to grips with your strengths and talents. I think that's a really practical tip. I don't just mean a bit of guesswork around that. Go find out specifically what they are and find out, do a bit of diagnostic on which ones are getting fed by what you currently do and thriving and which ones are not. So you can make sure you go into that shift with your eyes open. The second thing I would say to you is take the pressure off and ask yourself what's the worst that can happen. Because most of the time, if you give something a go, the worst that can happen is you realise you don't like it. Yeah. And that's fine.
Next question. Bit of context. I'm about to move into a senior leadership team position in a bigger organisation than I've previously been a line manager in.
Well done.
I need to find ways to balance being supportive and social with my team while maintaining some professional separation as their manager. Yeah. Any tips for how to manage this? Yeah,
this is a hard one. And this comes a bit down to personality. And I don't know the person who said this or what their personality is.
They said that they're naturally open, honest and friendly. Yeah. And they have ADHD. So they like to overshare.
Fine. So the overshare part, I get that. So I would say if you're natural, open, honest and friendly, that is going to dictate your leadership style. And you understand as you're talking what the possible shadow side of that is. I would not say that the route to success is to become mega boundaried and somebody that you're not. I would argue that there's more than one way to be a really great leader. So don't try and become someone you're not and think that if people have given you the advice, which is leaders must be removed and leaders must be, it's professional to keep a distance. I would argue that that's not always the case. And there are really effective leaders who would be more open and honest. Yeah. However, you're right that your personality is sometimes going to overtrust and overshare. So perhaps one of the things to think about when you're in more unstructured environments is to build in some ways of ensuring that you don't speak first all the time and you think before you speak and you build in some things that get you to stop and count before you go. I often walk away from places and think I've said more, I've overshared. So I have huge empathy for this person. But I was given advice a long time ago that was not that is not okay as a leader. You must never bring close relationships to your team. You should never have them in your home, all that kind of stuff. And I would argue for this person that if you've got some discipline challenges with your team, i.e. something's not right in the team, it's just as hard to deal with professional distance as it is with professional proximity. It's just hard. When you have to have a challenging conversation, it's hard. And I think the reason this podcast is called You're Better Than That is the idea that actually that's a gentle way from relationship to provoke us to do better. So I would say as you grow in your relationship with your team and you set the culture, vulnerability is really important. And part of your vulnerability could be to say, look, sometimes I talk too much or I sometimes I say more than I should do, and I'm being honest with you that that's something that I'm working on, because what you're doing then is creating an environment that your team can also say what they're working on. Yeah. So that would be my advice. Don't become somebody you're not, but perhaps do something that encourages you to be mindful in that setting of how you're sharing, because it's true, you will sometimes get it wrong in that way.
Yeah. Who would you have at a dinner party?
Oh my
Anybody,
goodness.
dead or alive?
Oh my goodness. This question I always find really stressful. I got asked a piece of work recently and went into total panic mode. There are people I'd have for all kinds of different reasons. I would love to have my mum's mum. She died when my mum was 7. So I've never met her, and my mum doesn't really remember her either, but I imagine she was amazing. So I'd love to meet her. I'd love to get to know the person that was my mother's mum, because her life was taken far too young. So she's somebody. I'm intrigued by David and Victoria Beckham. I think she's hilarious. So I'd have them for a completely different reason. Some people who are also interesting to me are Melinda Gates is interesting to me. Used to be married to Bill Gates. Warren Buffett, who is like a mega philanthropist, but also shed loads of money away. I'd find having dinner with some people that I don't really understand quite interesting too, like a Donald Trump. I don't want him for dinner on the basis of I feel like we've got a lot in common. I'm just fascinated to just understand the wiring of that man. Yeah, those are a few off the top of my head. Oh, there's loads of people I've not thought of that I'm going to kick myself later.
Which of your strengths...
Jane Austen. Sorry.
Jane Austen. Which of your strengths do you battle with the most?
Oh my gosh. So for listeners, if you haven't done your actual Clifton strengths, this person is talking about my personality assessment and my top strengths. Oh my goodness me. I think the combination that I battle with the most is being too bothered about what people think of me and feeling the heavy weight of emotion and changeable emotion. And that combo, sometimes I would love to be free from. Comes with the territory of being someone with a big heart and the fact that I really like everybody I meet. So I want that in return.
Nice. Hi, Hannah. I'd love to know how to lead and develop, playing on my number one strength, when you're not actually in a leadership role.
So this is somebody who's wanting to have opportunity to be leading and developing other people, but right now they're not in a leadership role.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, first thing I'd want to encourage this person to say is you are in a leadership role because people are looking at you and people watch what we do. Leadership, people are given leadership titles, but people are also born leaders, and a leader is someone that other people are following in some way, shape or form. So I would be encouraging you to think about how can I be doing things that are worthy of other people following me? How am I going to do that? Maybe you could look for opportunities to get involved in a workplace mentoring scheme where you can volunteer to have the opportunity to shape somebody, get involved in some workplace groups or committees, again, where you can shape and have given that delegated responsibility. Maybe where you can represent the views of other people in environments as well. And I would say that you might have to make your peace with the fact that there will be a bit of unfulfilled part of who you are that you've got to make your peace with until you get opportunity to really do this. Yeah. I worked with a guy a while ago in his early 20s who had got loads of influencing strengths, but he was quite new into the organisation. And I looked at him and I could, like, you are going to have a lot of responsibility in the future, but he hadn't got it yet. So I think the other thing to encourage you to do is to look at what leadership you can see around you and what would you like to emulate and what would you do different, and like learn and gather information on leadership so that as you get the opportunities to do it, you have really thought about what it is to be a follower. The best leaders are really good followers.
Yeah. Who are the women, famous or known to you, that you looked up to and sought to emulate when growing up?
It's a really good question. Do you know, I feel like there was nowhere near the female kind of role models as explicitly talked about as it is now. So that's the first thing to say. But there were definitely people that I thought were brilliant. I mean, obviously, I was really shaped by the two women that were closest to me, which was my mum and my big sister. My sister's a good 8 years older than me, and my mum is obviously my mother. And so they were older than me, and I looked at who they were a lot. So they were definitely people that hugely shaped my life. And I would probably say a couple of teachers had a big influence as well. Again, not known people. You know, teachers, if you're listening and you're a teacher, you have no idea how much you've shaped or influenced people. The role you're playing is immense when you are valued by that child. A teacher called Mrs. Powell had a huge impact on me. And then also Miss Smith, who was head of sixth form. She went on to be Miss Smith, it was Jackie Smith, who was the Home Secretary. And I was like in awe of her as a person who went and did what she did. So I think a lot of the people that I looked up to who were women were actually reasonably regular people who went on to do quite amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say there probably was a lack of like recognition of that. Do you remember a few female sportswomen that I loved? Steffi Graf as well, because I love the tennis, and I always loved her, and she was somebody else I kind of looked up to. But obviously I was never going to be a sportswoman, so it wasn't about emulating her. So that's a great question, because I think things have hugely changed, and I'm not sure I knew who to be looking at in that way.
Sure. How do you decide what your real values, passions and skills are when life just feels very meh?
Gosh. So I hope that some of the resources I put out help people to answer this question. I hope that doing things like getting involved in my coaching course can really help you when life feels like that. Because sometimes when you don't feel a lot, and we're losing our spark, it can be difficult. And I think if you feel like life feels without spark, I would encourage you to think about a time when it didn't feel like that. And think about what you were doing when it didn't feel like that. And it doesn't matter if you were 10 years old. You know, think about things you've done or been involved with. Doesn't have to be paid work, things that you've been involved with where you have felt yourself feeling alive. And what were you doing and why? So go back in time to look for clues. And I also think I would turn to other people and ask them what they appreciate about me. Get some feedback from outside yourself when everything feels a bit meh. And then I think about values. You can think again outside of yourself and think, who are role models to you? Who are people that you look to? Or what's things that makes your heart beat a bit faster? Have a look at a list of values on the internet and ruthlessly get them down to a list of 3. There's no right or wrong answers, but it's somewhere to start. So I think feel freedom to go outside of yourself, go back in time, and also get some frame of reference from people who know and care about you too.
Nice. This person has asked, how do you decide what topics to speak about before the podcast?
Yeah, we have a chat, don't we, Zoe? Sometimes something provokes a thought in my head and I think, we need to talk about that. Sometimes in a coaching session, something comes up and I think, this could be looked at in more detail. Sometimes we think about the time of year, what's going on, what we are noticing as themes or trends in people's lives. And we put all that into a melting pot. Things that I might have read or been engaged with, and we come out with some ideas. We are always open to ideas on that. So if you're listening and you've dropped in some questions, topics for whole episodes, we're also happy to hear, because it's quite a broad, it's a self-development, it's a development podcast. It's a I think we should, not self-development, it's community development. We're developing together.
Yeah.
So it's broad, and it can be about work, it can be about parenting, it can be around whatever you like. So that gives us quite a free rein.
Yeah. Okay. Someone has said, I'm particularly interested in how we make time to work on our businesses rather than in our businesses.
Yeah.
And so have you found anything helpful to get this balance right?
Yes, it's really hard, and I think they're right to want to do that. A couple of practical things is know yourself and know what motivates you to do hard things, because that is a hard thing and it's a harder choice. So what helps you do hard things? Ask yourself that. A couple of practical suggestions are block time in your diary. Get it in. I do block time in my diary for these things. I simply put it in. And I think for me, accountability really helps. So when you're working for yourself, and maybe the person who's asked that question has no team members, you need to find some structures of accountability or support outside of that yourself.
Yeah.
It could be a family member, it could be some sort of coach or mentor, and tell them what you're going to do, because that's massively motivating for me. If I said to you and Zoe, you and Laura, I'm having a day to work on strategy and it's in the diary, I am going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I take my responsibility seriously. So know how you're wired and play to that to motivate yourself, and you have to structure it. Also, another practical tip is use an out of office on your email, even if you're just for a few hours stepping away to do strategy, and put on your out of office what you're up to and why your access to emails is going to be limited, because the lure of being drawn into easy work is overwhelming. And when you put something like that on, you're giving you permission to step away.
Yeah. Going to do a few more questions. someone said, I've just started getting into the Gallup strengths after listening to your podcast.
Oh, good.
I was curious as to whether strengths are fixed or flexible. My expectation is that there is flexibility, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, simply, they're not as flexible as you'd think. So the Gallup data and research, they've done a whole piece of work on this, is that there are 34 strengths altogether, and that for the vast majority of people, their top 10 strengths are pretty set. They may wiggle around in order. Number 4 could become number 8. Number 8 could become number 2. But for most people, that sort of set of strengths is quite set. That's my experience. I did the test at 23. I did it again at 40, and my top 10 strengths are the same. They have changed order. A couple moved up the ranks and a couple moved down the ranks, but essentially me is me. And that is because it comes back to this truth, which is we bring our strengths to different environments and they grow and they develop, but who I am is who I am. When I was a little girl, when I was a 5-year-old little girl, I wanted to do things to please people, and I wanted to speak to people I didn't know, and I wanted to make people feel welcome and seen and understood. And I've done that as a teenager, and I'm doing that as an adult. My sister used to have an immaculate bed, like her bedroom. She wouldn't even let me sit on her bed. Don't sit on it, you're going to crease it. And her house is immaculate. So, you know, that's part of who she is. She's ordered. She's really ordered. She's naturally so much more ordered than me. And that, yes, we can grow in our learned behaviours around order, but it will never be my overwhelming top strength. So can I just make that clear to the person listening? We can grow in things that are not necessarily our top strengths. So I am actually quite organised, and I have I'm very planned because I have to be. But that is a learnt behaviour that I have learnt and grown in, but it isn't my overwhelming joy of the world.
Yeah.
My top strengths are those things. So don't conflate growth in areas as a change from your natural preferences and talents.
Nice. There's quite a few questions on this topic, but how do you manage poor behaviours in the workplace and negative behaviours that have become a pattern?
Yeah. Okay, I mean, really simply, I'd say to people something that they already know is that nobody wishes they'd left it longer to talk about it.
Yeah.
As in, most of us put things off like this because we don't want to do it. And nobody wishes they'd put it off because they grow. And what we allow and what we have as permissible that we don't address becomes commonplace. It's just the same as in a family home. If one sibling is rude to another one and you don't call it out, well, that's going to be permissible and it will become more and more of a thing. And any kind of poor behaviours in the workplace that we don't call out, I don't mean we call out every little thing somebody does wrong, but they become permissible. And so we have to guard culture and we have to address it. I think I'm sure people know this already, but I've been in situations where people have been publicly shamed for their behaviour, and that's never a good idea. I've sat there and experienced it, and I've received group emails where really, it's talking to one person, or a person has been publicly shamed on a group email. I've had all of those experiences. I think don't address something in the round that's really about one person, because that bugs people, because they're like, well, I don't do that, so why are you telling me off for it? And I would, if you've got regular connection with these people, if we can nip it in the bud smaller and quicker, it doesn't have to become such a big thing. And I think it's about calling people up to better behaviour.
Yeah.
So again, that phrase around, I think you're better than this. And I'm noticing, and also going in with curiosity, you could say something like, I am noticing that you're turning up 10 minutes late for every meeting and it's become a bit of a pattern. Can I ask you about that? Or is there something that's going on for you? And so if we start with inquiry, people are less defensive.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about this topic that I want to come back to, actually. I'd like to do challenging conversations and dealing with conflict. So I think we should go into this in more detail.
Yeah. I'll write that down.
Mm.
I think it would be lovely to end on this question. Okay. What phrase or quote resonates with you the most?
Long pause. I'm trying to think of the best one around this topic. And I think it's probably love covers all things.
Why?
Because when my attitude to anything is covered in love, and that's different types of love for different situations, the outcome is always better.
Love that, Hannah. Thanks for answering these questions.
Thanks for asking. That was so good. Gosh, I had to work extra hard then because it was all like, I didn't know what was coming next. I really enjoyed that. Let's do it again.
Yeah, it was good.